So welcome everybody who's here. Happy Wednesday. I hope your Wednesday is going good so far. In case this is the first Q&A that you've been on with us, we'll give you a little bit of a heads up of what to expect and introduce ourselves in case we are new faces to you. So for a quick introduction, Jody and I started Hughes and Strong because where everybody else gets really nervous and overwhelmed with systems, that's where our brains start clicking. And we're like, ooh, how can we make this easy and fun? So we're all about creating systems that make our lives as business owners easier. And we specialize specifically in Keeper because it's a really flexible tool that we can all use bits and pieces of to help fill in gaps in our tech system that we may not have solved before. So everybody's business is a little bit different. So truly and honestly, while we love Keeper, everybody uses it in a different capacity. So we'll really help share some inspiration for how we can use Keeper, other ideas, give you ideas on how to troubleshoot or work around things. But this is not a session where we are going to waggle our finger at you and tell you what you should do. That is all for inspiration, honestly. So make sure you're not putting undue pressure on yourself to have a perfect system or have the perfect SOPs. We're all just figuring it out as we go. So keep an eye on that as we're going and make sure you're not overwhelming yourself. So when it comes to Q&As for us and what you're in for today, so we'll do a little bit of a deep dive. So we'll walk you through some slides to help understand a concept in Keeper. So today's deep dive is going to be all about SOPs and how to house those checklists and instructions and resources for your team. And then we'll open up the rest of the call for Q&A. So if you have questions about other areas of Keeper, if you're not sure how to use it or implement it, you're just running into weird bottlenecks and don't know how to troubleshoot, floor is open after we get through with our deep dive. And let's see if there's anything else I wanted to mention. We tend to get really excited and walk a little bit fast. So if you are newer to Keeper, if we mention something that you're like, wait, stop the bus, what is that? Please feel free to throw it in the chat. We'll stop, take a pace back. We want to make sure everybody on this call gets something out of it. So don't let us blow too far too fast. We're happy to slow down on anything. Last piece of housekeeping, when it comes to if you have to hop off before we're finished with this call, you have another meeting, anything like that, we'll absolutely send out the recording, any resources, and the slide deck on Friday. So don't feel bad if you need to hop off or if you have other things that you're doing. There's plenty of ways to go back and go through anything that we covered. So I think with that, let's go ahead and dive into our deep dive today.
Yes.
Jody, let's make sure and start with just like general overview of what is an SOP, just to make sure we're all running on the same track.
Absolutely. So there are people refer to SOPs in a lot of different ways. Of course, I nerded out and looked up different definitions online to see, okay, what are people defining this as? And this is what they came up with, or what internet spat back out at me. But it's essentially standard operations and standard procedures. So it is the consistent way that you want very specific steps to be taken. So this is going to be written, it's going to be documented, it's going to outline the actual step-by-step process to complete that task. And it's going to be something that's clearly defined. So it's very easy for somebody to follow it. So that's the context we're going to go through the rest of this with, that's how we're defining the SOP. But where do we want to put them? There's so many places where you could put those. We had a wide variety dropped in the chat of where people are currently have them. And there was a lot of chatter about people saying, I want to move them to a different place or consolidate them into one place. Here's just a few options. Shared documents, whether that's in Google or SharePoint or any type of document that a team could use. If you're a solo person, that could even be a Word document. So anything like that. Another software, we had mention of Asana, we had mention of Notion, there's Airtable, all sorts of different software out there that can help organize some of this information. And then of course, we have the ability and the space within Keeper to keep these as well, which is what we're going to highlight today, is going into a deep dive of how can we put this information into Keeper. And we will touch base that if you have them outside of Keeper, there are ways to link them in. So we include that too with our notes today. But no matter which direction you choose to start out in, be consistent. Having them scattered all over the place can really stress you out as the person who is updating them or keeping them organized. But it can also become confusing for team members, especially new hires, as they're trying to understand and learn your business to be able to work effectively and efficiently. So, if nothing else, be consistent. How are you going to choose which ones? We have lots of options. We're going to give you examples, but how do you even go about beginning the choice process here? So we always start internally. Something that you'll always find with us, which we mentioned earlier today, is that we're never going to tell you there's one right way to do it. We're always going to help you figure out what questions to ask to get you to the point that's going to work best for you and your business. So where we start is internally. What season are you in with your business, with your life? Are you in a position where you can take the time and deep dive and do like a thorough organization of it? Or do you need something that's quick and easy? What feels intuitive for you? So for this, when you are in the heat of the moment, you're like, okay, I need to remember how I did that process. Where's the first place that your brain goes? That probably should be the first place, or that would be the recommended place to start. It's like, okay, if I always click on a checklist to open it up to see if the instructions are there, maybe that's where I start jotting down ideas or jotting down steps. So kind of gauge yourself. Don't think about how other people are doing it in a
Or
way
the
of saying
right
like, I have to do
answer.
it that way. Right.
Yeah, exactly. I think on the what season you're in as well,
Mhm.
it really does come down to how much capacity and time do you have toward documenting your processes. That's one that Jody mentioned. Another piece is, where are you at in your firm's size? Are you just by yourself? So it really just needs to serve you. Are you looking ahead and starting to get the pings of, I should probably think about hiring? Or do we have an established team that feels a little bit scattered and we're trying to wrangle them, right? So really be clear about what season, how much capacity you have, and where your firm is going, where it's at right now, and who you're creating the SOP for. I think that helps give a little bit of a North Star direction that you can guidepost to, and not get quite as caught in the like ideal or the perfect version, but really suiting what you're going to need right now and what your own internal objectives are.
Absolutely. And while you keep that in mind, consider pros and cons of each type of space. You want to evaluate how user-friendly does this feel for me? Is it easy to navigate? Does it simplify or make organization more complex for your brain? And then how easy is it going to be to update? Because as your business grows, your systems, your processes, the SOPs will grow with it. How you want to organize this information will probably change as your business changes. So keeping that in mind of how easy is this going to be to update if something changes in the future is a good way to gauge which direction you want to go through. And then the last piece here is, if you pick something today, that doesn't mean that you can't change to another one down the road. So start with what feels comfortable. And then as you grow, as your processes grow, you can then adjust and change if and when needed for your business. All right, now let's dive into some examples within Keeper of how we can approach putting in SOPs.
And I'm going to give the preface on the front end that this is a wide spectrum. So we're going to
Yes.
highlight different snapshots that we've seen people use within the community. So again, no shoulds here, just options. And we want to really look for that internal spark of, oh, okay, that's really cool. Or, oh, I didn't think about that. That's what we want to kind of key into. So use your gut to kind of lead you toward like what note to write down or what maybe to try within your business if you do want to get things within Keeper or easy to navigate between different systems that you're using.
Yes, absolutely. So the first one here is linking to an outside source. And in our example, this is a Loom video, just so it's a how-to for whatever the task might be. Here's a quick video on how to do it. Super simple, easy, doesn't take up a lot of space, but it's easy to get to and navigate to be able to watch or rewatch that whenever you need to.
And I think this is a really good example if you are in a stage in your business where you're moving to Keeper, but you already have things documented in another system. We're
Yeah.
all about, hey, drop it down. Don't try to take on the whole world at once. If you already have them somewhere else, let's start with attaching them to the new system. Right? We don't have to recreate everything as we're getting started. This is something that we can use as kind of a bridge to get to our ideal later on, that maybe we do want to flush it out more in a certain system or migrate over. This is a really great kind of placeholder, way to use what you already have.
Yeah. And again, linking to outside sources, but also with a quick checklist. So this would give you those tasks to actually subtasks to check off as you go, as needed here. So just a couple of different visual options of how this could look if you wanted to. Then there's also the other side of that with a full checklist of subtasks. So here you can see an example of clearing the bank feed. It breaks it down step by step by step for anybody to go in and take over this task.
And I
For
think
things like, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think one thing that is good to note here is really going back to what we were talking about with who are you creating these SOPs for?
Mm-hmm.
If you are in a season where you need to get this out of your brain so that somebody else can pick it up, and you're not sure if you're going to get a junior bookkeeper, if you're going to get a VA, like somebody less experienced, you're not sure who you're going to land with and the experience that they're going to have coming in. Having a more full-fledged checklist or kind of worded out can be really beneficial, so that wherever somebody comes into your business from and whatever experience they have, they can catch it and run with it, and therefore leave you with less questions, helping clarify, because you've done a lot of the clarifying here.
And with that, you can also have that general checklist of what it's like for every client. But then you can also have a separate area here for client specific details. So they got a very familiar process up top, and then down below, they can say, okay, for this particular client, these are the things I need to be on the lookout for. A couple of
Really
examples
quick pause there. This is really, this seems a little bit intimidating to think, oh my gosh, I have to copy and paste the general checklist and do a custom like for this client. This is where we really love templates, because templates can help give us that general checklist, apply it to multiple clients without having to copy and paste every single checklist. And then once you get it into the client, you apply that template so that it drops that task and checklist in. Then inside the client, then you can go add any client specific looms or resources or reminders or anything like that as well. So making sure we're being clear with how much work is involved with all of these. This doesn't mean you're having to do all of this from scratch.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so another example here is to do kind of a paragraph style for best practices. So this does not give you any sub checklist or subtasks. There's no checklist. So right here, you'll see there's no count
Or anything.
or fraction. Yeah, to say you've done X number of subtasks here from the checklist. This is just a paragraph. So it's one, and we included a note here to say, expand this task to see the best practices, so that that resource is there, but it's also not overwhelming if you don't need it. So you can either expand it or minimize that. There are also some who like to put their SOPs in the firm task section. So outside of the client, in the firm tasks, and they have one task or one line here for each process, and then checklists and subtasks underneath that, just walking through what that process might be. So this is another space within Keeper that could possibly house some of your best practices or firm information there. All right, so no matter what you decide, the most important thing is making them visible and easy to get to. The less friction there is, the more likely you are to open them up and utilize them. If they're difficult to find, chances are you're not going to take the time to go get them.
And I think this is an important point to really pause on, because we're even guilty on our worst day. It's Monday morning. It is in the middle of month end close. Everything is on fire. I haven't had my coffee yet. I'm not likely to click in to check and make sure I got that exactly right and got all 7 pieces of that. That's when we're more likely to kind of skim and be like, best guess. Okay, go on. Right. So really take into account those times where everybody feels on fire in your business. It's just a busy season, or any new hires. Again, those are the places that we're really those are the people on our team and the instances that we're really gonna want to make sure that our SOPs are easy to get to. And that's where we want to reduce the friction. Because even we're guilty of not going in and double checking that, because it's like, my brain says yes, and I have 12 other things I got to get to. It's not worth opening up and having that page load or having to go search through Google Drive for it. That's when we want it to be really easy.
All right, so that's the big kind of big picture. We always like to give you guys some creative, maybe some out of the box ideas for how you can make this your own. So here are some additional examples and ideas, ways to get creative. The biggest thing here is make it work for your brain. What helps you? What helps your team? So this example is breaking up the text with emojis. So that just helps to draw the eye to where you want it to, gives your eye a break as you're reading through. But that's one fun thing that you can do within Keeper and within your SOPs there.
And just to kind of pause, a lot of questions come up about like, I didn't know we could use emojis in Keeper. All we do is copy and paste them from another site like Emojipedia. Even Googling star emoji gets you there most of the time. Or a lot of times there is a shortcut within your own PC that allows you to get to kind of an emoji library as well. So these are not built into Keeper, but they're really easy to paste in to give us some additional formatting or ways to draw the eye, since we can't bold or italicize or do anything like that. So really easy workaround on that front.
And Melody just dropped into the chat the quick key command that you can do to get those up for our PC users. All right, another creative idea is to utilize that title space and reduce subtasks. So this is exactly what I was mentioning before, where instead of having it broken out into the subtasks that could be checked off, and now you have 0 out of 6 to do, you can utilize that title space and put in the instructions there, and then below it only have the checklists that are needed. So for this example, it's downloading bank statements. So for this example down here, that 3 means that there's 3 accounts that I need to download statements for. So at a quick glance, you can look at this and say, okay, I haven't gotten any of the statements yet, or I've gotten 2 of them, so 2 are checked off, but I still need to get 1 more. So this is just another way that you can, at a quick glance, know what's left to do on that task, or how many things you have left to do for that. But that's a good example, visual for you of reducing what that sub checklist fraction is going to show you.
And I think this is all about really playing around with any issues you're coming up against or kind of bottlenecks in Keeper. So for a lot of us, that general checklist on top of the client specific one can kind of cloud our visibility on what we truly have to do and the amount of steps and kind of the progress that we're in, because that general checklist doesn't often get checked off. It's really the statements in this example that do need a check off to give us that visibility. So just being able to play with that and get a little bit more creative, this is something that we're starting to play more around with, so that the fraction, that progress bar, is actually the number of tasks or pieces involved in this and not clouding with some of our best practices. So this is something that we can go into the demo and show you exactly how to do here in just a second as well, because I know there's some questions coming up with that.
Yeah. For those processes or things that you're doing that have a lot of steps. So this example here is disengaging with a client and all the different things you don't want to forget doing. Onboarding is another one, but there are other processes that you might do on a regular basis that get pretty lengthy. So for this one, there's 18 things that for this one task it says to do. Well, you can break that up a little bit by utilizing multiple checklists. So that way you can segment it out a little bit more and make it a bit more digestible, not quite as overwhelming to see one solid, huge list going down.
Yeah, I think a huge part of this is reducing the visual overwhelm as well, which honestly is part of what makes documenting our processes so difficult. It's like, I've got to record what I have to do. I've got to get it out in words, which is sometimes really difficult because it's just kind of stored in our habitual hands. We just do it. So I'm not having to explain it. And then there's the formatting. So a lot of these are, how do we format it to where it doesn't feel like just this wall of text that I don't even want to read, let alone anybody on my team.
Yeah.
So again, just kind of getting creative with the formatting can actually do wonders here once we actually have our checklist together.
Yeah. So real quick, before we dive into the demo to be able to show you where you guys can go to do these types of things and answer any other questions you guys have, let's briefly go over how do you like what to do next, documenting your processes, software that can help. So we recommend starting with things that you're going to outsource first. So whatever those items are, sometimes they're the most repetitive items that you are going to pass off so somebody else can take them on. Start with those. Naturally, just record it the next time you do it in any format that you feel comfortable with. And then be clear about which software the task is completed in. Keep it
That's
simple.
a really big, that being
Yeah.
clear about which software is just one to pause on, because it's super easy for us to just habitually know, but that's a huge gap we see with teams is like, okay, I see the checklist, but like, what am I doing it over here? Am I doing it in Keeper or QBO or Asana? Like, where does that live? So just making sure that you're filling in some of those gaps that feel intuitive to us because we know the process.
Yeah. Yeah. Keeping it simple. Delegating the transcription to a new hire, VA, or freelancer. So this is one thing that I think a lot of people forget about. When you have a new hire coming on, but you haven't established documentation on all of the processes, make that part of their onboarding. Make that part of as they're learning it. Yeah, as they're learning and training, write it out. Help us take these videos that I've recorded for you to teach you how to do this, and let's write it out to get that process done. Kate mentioned in the chat, absolutely AI. There are so many things coming out that can really help with this process and make it a little bit easier. So let's take a look at some of the software that we can use. Loom's a popular one, ScribeHow, even just recording in Zoom, all of those can work. I tested out Guide today and it was phenomenal. It creates a video. It has a PDF with screenshots. You can easily edit it. If you want to have a voiceover on it, an AI voice can do it for you. You can record your own voice over it afterward. So there's a lot of flexibility, you know, in ways that you can use different software and AI to help get these things documented and processed in any form or fashion.
Yeah, and I think the big key here is to really make it easy on yourself. Like, don't go so far into trying to get the ideal version that you fumble with the software that makes you more frustrated. This is already hard enough. We're already having to document processes that we do that's already taking up more of our time and brain space. It's just an objectively difficult task. Even if we enjoy the process, there's so much that we have to do. It's hard to add that onto your to-do list, let alone try to like fumble with the software that feels really clunky for you to use. So again, go with something that's smooth, that feels easy. That's why we even mentioned like starting with a recording on Zoom. All of us are on Zoom anyway for different meetings and things like that. So worst case scenario, simplest bar, start with something that you already know. But again, these are some of our favorite 3 that can really help make that process easy. So you can hit record and just go on your process.
Yep, absolutely. And don't discount the 1.0 version of things. So a lot of, like Erica said, a lot of the times we're trying to get it right. We're trying to be perfect. You don't even have to be on camera for all of these things. Like, it's just a matter of get a starting point. You can always go back when you have more time and space and re-record and make it more polished if you want to or need to. But don't discount the, hey, I just want to get a 1.0 version just to have something. And you'll be surprised that it often makes you feel so much better to have something instead of just that constant pressure of I want to have something, but I don't yet. And it's
all
a
just
lot of
stuck in
friction
my
to get it
head.
started.
Yeah, it gets really hard. One other piece that goes along with this, like making it easy, is don't be afraid to keep the recording going if you hit a mistake. I think that is one of the biggest pieces that we all get caught on, is like fumbling for the wording, or, oh shoot, this didn't go the way I wanted it to. Sometimes those are the most helpful recordings as a new hire or as somebody coming in, because I'm likely to face that same issue at some point. So don't feel like that is a bad thing or that's imperfect. Walk through it and be like, oh, this doesn't always happen, but when it does, here's how I work through it and get back to where I'm supposed to, or here's what I usually do to try to troubleshoot this. Don't worry about re-recording it. Again, that 1.0, even if it has a mess up or a mistake or something that doesn't usually happen, still really helpful for anybody else coming on to try to help you with these tasks.
All right, so questions time. Throw them at us here. Let us know if you have questions about SOPs. I'm going to open up the demo. Feel free to put in questions about anything within Keeper too. So floor is open. Eric, did you see questions already that we wanted to start with while folks are
the
thinking
biggest
through?
one is how to like remove the checkbox or use that as a paragraph. I'll scroll through and make sure we didn't miss anything so far.
Did you already set one up in one of the demos?
I did not.
Okay,
so
then we'll just jump into one.
We'll do it together.
Yeah, we'll do it together here. Okay, so if you are doing it just at the client level here, jump into one of your clients. So here was one that we showed earlier with the clearing the bank feed. Everything's here, and then we had our client specific below. So the way that I started out doing this, and I'll do this too inside my templates, and then I can reapply and update my checklist and everything within my clients. But here at the client level, all I did was I would highlight the line, come into the title, make that space, drop it in. And these title spaces I have not reached a limit yet on how big they can get with the paragraphs that I've been putting in here. So you've got quite a bit of space to work with. I add extra spaces in here just to make it easy on the eyes. But this is just a real quick way to open these up. And oops.
So it can only be the topmost items. If you want
title.
Yeah, if you want to have a non-checklist item with checklists underneath it, you would have to do each checklist separate. I don't know if that made any sense. Add a new checklist
try
for
it one
each
more
number.
time just to make sure. Yeah. Try it one more
Okay.
time just to make sure I gotcha. But yeah, this is an example. So I think actually Jody might have answered your question just in doing this. So this is a checklist, but this is all in the title spot. There's actually there's no checklist items on or subtasks on that checklist. We can do a combination
and I could
of both.
do the same thing.
Yeah.
With this one.
But if you wanted to have checklist, you check them off items with it, they'd have to be their own checklists.
No,
you couldn't.
You could actually, right underneath, Yeah, you
Oh,
could
say I
add
wanted
the
one where
title.
you are right now under number 5.
Okay.
So you can
Up
add
here?
yeah,
Or you mean like add a
a circle to
checklist
check. Yeah.
to check off? No. So you're
Okay.
gonna have your entire, it's because it's the title of the
Right.
checklist. We're just
Right,
pushing
right,
it
right.
and using it as a paragraph space. So
Okay.
yeah, anything above there is just going to be your text. And then
Gotcha.
anything that you physically want somebody to check off, you would need to do that as a
Put underneath
subtask.
it, or right.
Yeah.
Or you,
Mhm.
break it up into different checklists so that they would
Yeah,
all
Right.
that's when
do
you
that.
might break it up into multiple checklists.
Yep.
That's a really good idea. If you want a
Gotcha.
little bit of a combo, that's the best way to execute that within Keeper as it stands right now.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Great question.
Yeah. So for this example, I put all of it into the titles. So now it doesn't show anything as a sub tasks or checklist here. There's a lot of information down below, but people wouldn't know that unless I put in a note here. So if you are going this route and you want to create more of the paragraph style without any subtasks to check off, then I highly recommend adding a note in here.
Best
And of course,
practices
I always
below
use, yeah,
or something like that.
expand, just something that denotes, hey, there's more information here. Open this up to see it. So just keep that in mind as you're going as well. One other thing to note about these, and let me go down to a different one that actually has it. We'll do expense and consistency here. If you have hyperlinks, so if you've got URLs in here that you want to be able to easily click on and open right away, you have to put those into a subtask right now. If you were to take this and try and put it into that title, it is not going to be clickable. So I've checked out of here. I cannot click on this to open it right away. If I click on this one, it will. So you see how my mouse, my cursor changes to that hand to be able to open that up. Up here, it's never going to let you do that, at least right now, unless Keeper opens it up. So you could definitely come in, highlight it, and copy and paste it into a new tab. But if you want a link in here to be clickable, you would want to leave that as a subtask.
Yeah, great mention. And again, it's a workaround. So this is not going to be a perfect notes section. That's why we got to get a little bit creative here on some of these pieces, but really fun one that we found here because we were getting to the point where it was frustrating that the like fractional checklist was not truly the number of items that I need you to check off. And there was that visibility gap.
Ellen pointed out as well that the links here, they are clickable in the description area. Now within these Keeper reports, there you don't have the option for the description, but on a standard task up here, you can put a link in here and it will be clickable. So just the quick notes of where those things live.
And
or can live.
one kind of addendum to that, if you start putting, you really like the formatting of putting the link directly in that description, but your links are getting kind of hellacious, like they're getting ridiculous and they're taking up the whole page. There is a setting that you can turn on inside of your practice settings to shorten task descriptions. So that'll make it to where there's like a see more kind of ... If you want to try using it in the description, but it's just taking up the whole page, that's what we would recommend there.
And to find that, it is, you click on the settings wheel, come to practice and settings under tasks. And then right here at the bottom, shorten task descriptions. So that's where you can make that a little less lengthy.
Alrighty, with that, Jody, I've got a couple questions here queued up for you. So, for Kate, you asked a really good question. So to get to that next line, there's no like trick here, within that title, you're just hitting enter to get to a new line. Now a bridge off of that question, because I've heard it a lot. Jody, do you have any kind of quick keys that allows you to like tab to the next checklist item to create another one? Have you found a workaround for that? Wanted to ask and make sure I wasn't just being dumb.
So I know that just hitting tab, you can get to it. So if you're in another one and you have one blank below, you can tab to get to that next one. You can shift tab to go back up, but to actually hit this button, no, I've not found one. If I know that I've got a bunch of steps to go, I will just sit here and click this multiple times, get myself several lines ready to go, and then I can
Get them
tab
kind
my
of
way
queued
down.
up, and then you can
Yep.
hit tab to get to the next one.
Yes, that's how I typically do it if I have a lot. Because no, I have not. You can't tab and then hit enter.
Cool. So as long as
don't
we
think-
hit that to create the
No.
lines, essentially, then we can tab between. Cool.
Yeah.
Ellen, you asked a great question about, are they working on more ways to copy and paste or kind of duplicate a task and move it to another template? That's definitely on their radar. Right now, it is a very manual process. So it is well on their mind. I'll make sure to send out the canny request for that, the feature request, or see if I can find it here quickly. But for right now, when it comes to templates, there's no way to move one task from your onboarding template into a different template easily. We can do that here if it's on the
Yep, that's what I was
client
going to
page.
show.
Either in the non-closing or the closing, we do have a move button, but within templates, that is a limitation, but it is on their radar at least.
Yeah. So in our templates here, you click on it, you don't have that option. So yes, right now, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. But yes, we'll send out that canny request so everybody can upvote. And Kate mentioned there's also a canny request for those keyboard shortcuts to be able to make creating those task lists and that kind of thing a little bit more easy, or a little easier. So we'll include that canny as well in our follow-up.
I'll go ahead and post in the chat. I'll also have this in the recording notes for anybody that doesn't catch it now, but here's the feature request for moving tasks between different sections in the template. And then somebody also added on into different templates as well. So there's that for everybody.
Well, don't be shy, everyone. Feel free to drop questions into the chat. Anything at all that you are curious about, anything you want us to show you where it might live, how to get to it, something you're curious about that you haven't seen before. Okay.
Yeah, there's one from Amber. If you don't mind scrolling up just a minute.
How far up?
Oh, here. When adding a non-recurring question from a template, does it always add it in a different order and kind of jumble it? It's a really good question. I actually haven't.
That is a great question. I have not tested it to see if it jumbles it up when it comes through. So you're talking about when you drop in a template and it drops in non-transaction questions?
Correct.
Is that what she was
That's
asking?
what it seems like. Okay, perfect. Thanks for the clarification.
Have you noticed that happening for you?
Is it jumbling it up in a different order?
Yeah, so I had added some questions to an onboarding template, and I have done this for other clients, and this one I had like 25. The other ones I had maybe like 10, but when I brought it in, I had to like reorganize everything in the way that I needed it to flow. So I didn't know if it was something that was known.
That's a really interesting. So just to clarify, is it that your onboarding questions, just what was in the template was all jumbled, or it was jumbled when you added two templates, like a onboarding and a payroll that had questions, and it was jumbling both of those together? Just kind of curious.
No, so just the onboarding had basically the
non-transaction questions.
Yeah.
Like this.
Yes. And so I didn't have them numbered, but when I have another template that has about like 10 questions in there. and I can add those and it doesn't jumble it. But if I have more than, well, I'm thinking that's the issue because I have like 25 questions. It just mixes it
Starts getting
all.
wonky.
Yeah.
I
I'm
will
testing
look
it right
and
now just
see.
to see.
Yeah,
There,
if I'll go ahead and look and see if there's any canning requests out there. If not, we do need to flag that to the team for sure. Because you don't need to, that's an easy fix within the system. It may take a little bit to get on their plate. But that's not something that you should have to reorganize every time. So if it's not a canning request, we'll make one.
Okay.
Yeah. In this test that I just did, it does appear for this particular one, this one time that it dropped in the same way that it was in the template. But that doesn't mean that it would do that every single time. I was just curious if it would jumble from the very get-go. I know that that's happened in the past with other areas of Keeper, depending on if they had it in the coding for it to be alphabetical or whatever the default would be. So yeah, we'll do some research on that one to see if there is any kind of thing in the background of how those are
Organized or dropped in.
yeah, or organized.
Okay,
Yeah,
and I
so-
don't know if it's just because the number, there's more than I've had before. So anything over 20 or 25, then it just makes
Yeah.
it jumble.
Yeah, I'll put it
We'll
on our
ask.
testing list to get kind of a recording to send to the team. So we'll definitely keep that in the loop. And then if we create a feature request or when we find that feature request or create it, I'll send it over to you so you can upvote too.
Right.
Okay. I
In
have
the
another,
meantime, I was gonna say, in the meantime, if you need to, you can come in and rearrange them. So
yes,
you can come in and reorder it if you do want them to be in a specific order, but they get dropped in jumbled, you can manually come in here and rearrange those.
okay, yeah, that's what I had to do, but sitting there and doing 25.
Right.
Oh yeah, it's definitely not ideal, which is why we want to flag it with the team.
Yeah.
For
Thank
sure.
you.
Yeah.
I-
Did you say you had another question?
Yeah,
Feel
I
free.
do have another question. In the main, if you were to do the home button and see all client lists there, what is a good way to review this information in a way that makes it easier to see like what items, other than like saying that it needs to be. So let me back up. So if someone starts a close of August, but July financials weren't reviewed and sent out, but they start August, what is the best way that you can see whether or not July was closed?
So you can come up here you've got some quick buttons up top that'll show you, it defaults to the latest close. But if you click on open, it's going to show you everything that's incomplete. So if
Okay.
it's not marked done, it's going to show up on this list.
Okay.
If
And
you
that's
wanted to
one that
see
you can
everything
further
included
filter.
done,
Yeah.
you can click on all, and then it's going to show you every close for every single client, whether, done and incomplete. But this is a good way to kind of double check how many do I currently have open per client. So you can see in our demo account, we've got a lot here that are still open. So that would be my first tip, would be to click on open and just see how many are there. And then of course you can create saved views around that as well.
Okay.
To be able to navigate to that if needed.
Yeah,
Thank you.
if there is anything that you're wanting a little bit more like specificity on, like if open isn't quite giving you or it's still giving you too much, then you could always filter down that status if it's only the like ready for review that never got closed that you're really looking for. Or you can always differentiate there or even filter out not started. Sometimes that's the biggest thing where it's like a bunch of not started that are just cluttering up the view. So you can always filter down by, yeah, great idea. Either the close period, if it's any of 2014 that you're curious about, and you want to weed out some of the ones before that are clogging this list, or if you want to filter down some of those statuses to, again, filter out something that you don't need. You can always get a little bit more creative, but I think that open is a really good tab to at least start on.
And if
So-
you do find a filter and all that that you like, go ahead and click that save view button, save that so it's easy to get to next time and you don't have to reset up that view.
Okay. And then, so when someone opens up a new month, do you suggest having them put like in progress versus like maybe like current month? Because they're not really closing. They're just using it to do their weekly tasks.
I think it's probably going to be preference for you and your firm. What makes sense for you guys as you communicate with each other about the status of different things. So yeah, I don't have a one good answer for that.
Yeah, in general, what I've seen most typically is that somebody may open the next close as part of their closing process, right? After you're finished with everything, then open the next one. But maybe inside of that month-end close section in maybe the top section, once they start gathering statements, maybe that's when you have them shift to in progress. So you know, hey, we've just opened it, but we haven't started on anything, versus like this is the clear time that it becomes in progress. Or you can always add another status if you need something a little bit more custom, in case there is this gap with like, I need to know if the statements are gathered, if we just opened it, if we're starting to reconcile. So that may be something to play with as well, is just clearly defining where it truly becomes in progress for you as a manager to make sure you have visibility, and adding another couple that may help kind of break that down if there's anything that feels like it's too big of a jump.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
You're
absolutely.
welcome.
Great questions.
All right.
All right, Judy, I've got a couple for you. So, we've got a question about how can we add a task on the fly? So if we're out and not at our desk and need to set up a reminder, is there an easy way to do this? I think this is a really good question. Jody, do you have any ideas?
Well, actually, I was going to throw it back to you and ask if because I don't have, you've worked with the Gmail, the email extension thing more than I
Yeah.
have. I don't know if that would be a solution for this. Outside of being in Keeper, I don't have any quick tips on creating tasks there. I
Yeah.
know that the extension, like the Chrome extension, is increasing in abilities of what it can
And
do. But
versatility,
again, that's
yeah.
going to be you at your computer, just on a different page.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of, so I think the short answer here is not at the current moment. I think there's a couple of workarounds if you were on like a tablet and you were able to get the Gmail integration set up. That's a way that we can add tasks from our email. So that may be kind of a workaround-ish. But at this point, I don't think there's a really great way if you're not at your desk or you're not able to open up Keeper, like if you're on your phone or something like that. Yeah, it's still one of those that's definitely on the team's radar, but there's not a perfect workaround, honestly. Great question, though.
Yes.
Ellen, you've got a question around, can you add a template from the actual month-end close, or do you have to go to the template section and then apply it to the client? This is a really great thing that's a newer update. So yes, you can do it from this page. You don't have to click and toggle quite as much.
Yes, super exciting. When they added this drop-down menu, they allowed us, yes, they enabled us to be able to open up templates over top of this month-end close. So when you're on your close here, your client page, instead of clicking on the home button, click on that drop-down. You can quickly get to any of these other areas. Now, these top 4, that's going to take you to that tab, that page. But templates, that opens on top of the page you're in. So if you click on templates, it's going to put it right over top of that. You can select what you want, drop it in.
I have done that. I just didn't notice that it was a little bit less clicking, that I wasn't actually going out to the templates area. It was
Yeah,
copied.
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
about the same clicks, but it's a lot less loading time, which I think
Yeah.
is the really
Yeah.
important thing, especially with a system like Keeper. I think it's that loading time that really makes it different here between, okay, going back to the client list and then letting that load and then going back to the templates and then letting that load. I love that this allows us to pull it up over top of the client page. Now, one important thing to note, if you were to click on a template right now and hit apply to a client, it doesn't auto select.
Yeah,
So
that
you'll
was
still
be
have
my
to,
next
I know,
request.
Yeah.
that's my next extension off of that I'm like, oh, this is really cool, but that makes me want this. It's kind of like if you give a pig a pancake, it's like, then he'll want syrup.
Right.
But one step closer, just keep an eye out because it won't auto. So I've gotten stuck in the loop where I assumed it would auto, just like the timers, right? It automatically pulls up the client. So I was like, oh, okay. Does not work like that. So if you're hitting apply to client and you're getting a weird error, make sure you click the client you need it to drop into.
And to build off of that, if you are on the client page and you are applying a template to that client, as soon as you click apply, your whole page is going to refresh. So if you're wanting to add more than one template to that client, you are going to see that it's going to take them maybe a little bit longer than if you had gone out,
Okay.
applied all of them and come back in, just because every time you do one, it reloads. Again, this is something out there that we're like, please let us select more than one template to drop in when we're in there. That's out there. The request is there. I'm sure it will come to us eventually. But yeah, right now, if you're in the client and you apply a template, as soon as you hit apply, it will refresh that page. So keep that in mind.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
All right, we got about 5 minutes left, Erica.
Okay, Amber, I'm going to answer a really quick one. So is there a way to merge templates together? No. So that's what Ellen was asking about earlier. So if you scroll up in the chat a little bit, there is a feature request to be able to like move things across templates or merge templates. So right now, the best way that we've found is to, it's going to be a copy paste. You can make it a little bit easier by opening up an incognito window and then a logged in window. That way you can copy from one, paste into another. Now be really, really, really careful with this. Don't make changes in both. Use that incognito window as you're copying only, right? We don't want to bug Keeper out because we're doing things from two angles, but that allows you to copy and paste a little bit more streamlined instead of having to open up the task, copy the checklist, open up the next task, copy the checklist, that sort of piece. So that's the only workaround we have right now. It's a known and very common feature request. So definitely keep an eye out for that and upvote.
We will take time to go through every question that's in here. But before our time runs out, in case you guys have meetings coming up in a few minutes, wanted to make sure that you know what additional resources are out there to support you. So as you know, you're here today, every third Wednesday, 2 p.m. We've got our monthly Q&As, hughesandstrong.com/keeper. There's lots of additional resources available to you there. And then we also have our YouTube channel available where we've got these recordings set up as well.
Thanks for that, Jody. So those are kind of the free side of things. We also are able to help in any capacity as well. So everything along the spectrum, again, our whole goal is to just meet you wherever you're at with whatever would take a little bit off of your shoulders. So whether that's training your team on Keeper as you're still getting your head around it and helping share some best practices. If you want us to go do a diagnostic review, look behind the scenes, give you some suggestions, help you troubleshoot something that's a little bit clunky for you, totally can do that. And then we do have varying degrees of helping you out. Either that's guided support, getting you set up with our templates and helping you walk through that with a video library, or we can also do full hands-on setup as well. So way happy to go into more detail and explore those services if it's something that you need a little bit of help with, or you saw our templates and you're like, okay, I don't want to start from scratch. More than happy to help, but feel free to reach out to us and we'll explore that a little bit more in depth.
All right, so for those of you who do need to hop off, feel free. As Erica mentioned, we will be sending out the recording, so you'll get all of this no matter how long we go today to answer questions. You'll be able to circle back and review that. But with that, we're going to jump back to questions. Stick around as long as you would like to, but if you have to go, no problems there. Thanks for being here today.
Alrighty, back up. So next up, Ellen, so you have a question about firm tasks. I love this area. So are they still all visible to all team members? There has been a recent update where we now have a new role, which can add a little bit more or less visibility within the team, which is great. Jody, I don't want to speak wrong. Have you seen any updates around this?
No, and I have reached out directly to Keeper to ask this very specific question about whether firm tasks has been affected yet. At this point, no. It is all still visible to all members right now. So as soon as I hear back from them with an idea of what that looks like, we'll be happy to pass that information along. I know that it's on the roadmap somewhere, but I also know that there have been some other areas of Keeper that have been higher priority. So I'm sure that it's going to come down the road, but as of right now, it's still the same where everybody can see all firm tasks.
Yeah. And just for anybody else who hasn't come across this tip, the workaround that we all have, if you need something that is not visible across all users on your team, you can create an unconnected client. So this will still be visible to admins, which is why we're hoping for that upgrade to where you can make a truly your own private section in firm tasks. But you can create exactly just like we have an admin task here. You can create an unconnected client that's unpaid, so it doesn't count to your subscription cost. And then you can still use the non-closing area for any tasks or the notes area or anything like that. So that's the workaround, not perfect. So we'll keep an eye out for that adjustment when it comes down the pipeline. Okay, Kate had a great question, just kind of confirming the naming convention. So Jody, do you mind going into Growth Custom and just opening up any task?
Mm-hmm.
So for that example that we were playing with earlier, main body task, underneath it description. Where we put that paragraph is where it currently says checklist. So it is this entire checklist. It's that title line that we were playing around with as a paragraph. And then you have subtasks underneath. So you can have multiple checklists. That's that grayed out grouping together. But hopefully that clarifies a little bit of the kind of nomenclature that we were using because they all kind of jumble up, and clarify that where we were putting that is where it says checklist. Yep, great clarification there, Kate.
I saw that Julie asked, where do you add various statuses? So that's going to live up here in your practice settings on the tasks tab here. All the way at the bottom, you have options for your close status, and you also have task status options. So close status, this is going to be the client as a whole for the close. So you can create different status options here. They are, you do have the ability to add color to them. So you can have it color coded. You can also set up notifications for these custom close statuses. It could either be a role or a specific person that gets notified. And what happens is that if this status gets applied to a client, then an email goes to this person to say, this status was added to this client. So that way it's a flag, an automatic flag to say, hey, this is something that you wanted to be notified about in case actions are needed. You can also have set up reasons for why something got selected. So a really good example is stuck. So if something's going on and the close is stuck, you cannot make progress anymore, and you choose this status, It's going to pop up with a window and you have to select one of the reasons for why that status was chosen. So you have a lot of flexibility here within your closed statuses. And again, all of that is within your practice settings down there at the bottom. Now, you do have options for your task status as well. This is a lot more limited. This is just going to be adding additional or removing the options that are available here. No color coding, no notifications or anything like that, but you can still utilize these as you need to.
Let's also show where you update that status. So this is one that has changed or may not be a noteworthy button. So if you're on the client list, you can change it there within that. If you're already on this closed page, you don't have to go back to the client list to upload it or change it. You can do that from up here. So just to save a little bit of loading time for everybody's team on the ground, just making sure that that button is noted there. That's where that status lives. And it stays up there at the top as kind of a frozen bar. So no matter where you're at on the page, you can change that status.
I love that. Just a quick question. Is that practice oriented or client oriented? Just because I have to email, if I get to that stuck status, I have to email a certain person for each individual client. So not, what am I trying to say? I have to email, you know, John for client A and Bill for client B. You know, how would I set that?
Yeah, so that's when I would recommend using those roles. So it's a setting you need to turn on here. But if I set up these roles here, so traditional are preparer, reviewer, manager, you can label those however you want to by hitting the override. If you'd rather it be junior
Nice.
level, senior level manager, right? However you want to organize it. But with this, then you're establishing whoever's in this spot in the team, whoever's my second on that team, whoever's the final reviewer on that team, notify them. And then on the client, that's when you can set who's in that role for that client. So backing up here within this status, you would set up notify the manager or notify the preparer or notify the reviewer. And then on the client, you would make sure that that's set so that it notifies John for client A or Sally for client B. Does that make a little bit more sense? Want to make sure I didn't go too far too
It
fast there.
does. Thank you.
Okay.
Beautiful. It's lovely. It is honestly a really cool tool. I will save you the nerdy rabbit hole. This also comes really in handy when it comes to reassigning tasks. So if John goes out for vacation and he's out for a month, somebody else has to take over. The role can really come in handy because you can change who's in that role and help filter down, hey, anything that was assigned to John will now be pushed over to Sam. So lots of really fun. It's a very big rabbit hole. But that's a really easy way to help Keeper still allow you to pass along that message, but give Keeper the info for who to pass it to on which client if it's not the same across all clients.
Love it. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. I always love talking about the roles. It's an easy one to skip, but it's very cool. Alrighty. Oh, Amber also had a question. Jody, was there anything else you wanted to mention there? I want to make sure I wasn't going.
Nope, I was just jumping ahead to the
perfect.
client portal or the question Amber had.
Amazing, on the same page. So Amber, is there a way to set essentially send different reminders for different clients, right? So set the email reminders to go out on this frequency and the text reminders to go out on this frequency, or to be able to adjust that client by client, because Sam needs a bump every single day, but Sally's really good and you need to just send her one at the end of the week.
So the answer to that is not now. So no, but hopefully in the future we'll have that ability. So right now, this is at the practice level. So in your practice settings, client portal reminders, this is where you set that frequency. And then this is going to be the frequency for every client. And it will be both email and text that go out. Everything's going to be at the same time. You do have the option all client settings to turn this on or turn this off. Right now, that's all that we have. So where did it go? Can't I see it? Scroll. So client portal reminders here. So this is all client settings if you're wanting to see it for all clients at one time. All client settings, close. Client portal reminders. This is where you can enable them or disable them based on the client who needs it. So if one client only needs email, that's fine. One client only wants text, you can choose that. Somebody wants both, you can choose that. But again, that frequency is going to be the same for both email and text across all clients.
Yeah, and I did throw in the chat that feature request, super highly requested. It's on everybody's minds.
Yeah.
So that's our best way to make sure it's on the team's radar. Great question.
Do you have
And
any
we have
others left?
gotten through everybody. If there's anybody else still standing that has another question, feel free to unmute yourself and just ask. So we'll hang around for just a couple more seconds to make sure there wasn't anybody who just didn't have fingers like lightning today. But otherwise, for anybody else that needs to hop off, thanks again for joining us. We always appreciate these calls and get down and nerdy in all things Keeper. So thanks again for joining us. Feel free to unmute and we'll hang on for a second if you have any last questions.
Thanks, everyone.
Hey, this is Christy. I don't know how to turn my video on. Will you go into that growth custom landscaping? There was at the very top, you had a section there, the project overview. I just
This here,
I
client
don't-
details?
Yeah. Is there more to it or is that
Yeah.
that it?
So if I click into it, I can open it up. And there's lots of space in here that you could add more. So once you get to a certain number of lines, which I think it is right here, this is the max number of lines that you can see. Right here, you can see this ... So that's telling you that could be more in here. It's saying that there's more in here because we have entered space. So it's just recognizing that space. But
So is there a section that you added, the client details?
So
this is something you have to
normally-
turn on.
Yeah, I was gonna
Okay.
say,
Yeah.
without turning it on, it does live everywhere inside of that info card. So it's the second tab over details. So
Yeah.
that's where it lives within your account, but we can make that visible.
Yeah.
Okay.
To make it visible, this is going to be at the practice level. You can access that going through the practice settings wheel at the top. You can also get to it from any of your sections at the manage sections. So any of your
Well, that's a newer
sections
one.
or areas, you just click on manage sections. It's going to bring this up. Right here at the top is where you can turn this on.
Okay.
So we have it checked on and that opens up that space right at the top.
Oh, and
So just
it's
like
at
any
the
other
top-
section, this is gonna be across all clients, whether you
Okay.
have anything in that section or not.
Yes.
It will only be this big though. So that's really important. Even if you add more lines, it's not gonna, when they first rolled it out, it took up the entire page. That's not the case now. It is only that limited spot, but this is another area that we can format however we would like to, add any quick links, those sort of things, up here in that section.
Okay. That's awesome. I'm not using, I mean, I guess I don't even have anything in my client details, but that's,
It's a really cool area.
Now-
I love that we can have just like a sticky note up at the top for random reminders or whatever we need as far as links go.
You
yeah.
always
sure.
need to save though. That is really key to this section
Yeah.
is you want to hit save. So if there's
Well, this is
nothing
not
in
an
it,
autosave
that's what it's going
section.
to take up. If
Yeah,
there's
it's the
nothing
same-
here, that'll be the space.
Same as the notes, yeah.
Yep,
Yep.
exactly. So keep that in mind. Both Jody and I have overwritten each other because we forgot to hit save or, it happens. So just keep an eye out for that. But again, this is an area that we can, actually, if you'll open that up really quick, you can always paste in the emoji just like we did everywhere else. But this is a really
Mhm.
cool area because you have some of that flexibility that we don't see in many other areas to have a numbered checklist or have some bullet points, include a hyperlink, that sort of thing. So we've seen a lot of people starting to play around and use this for different pieces, and it varies across different firms. Like some people will put their entire what would usually be like a client file in here for just quick info. There's other of us that will just include the client links or just include any client specific like looms or anything like that. So really flexible. Everybody uses it a little bit differently, but that's the client details. It's pretty magical.
Yeah.
Another
that's cool.
fun little tidbit about this. If you have a Word document where you've colored the text, so maybe you've used green for
Yes.
something and pink for something else and highlighted something yellow, anything like that. If you do that outside of Keeper, because right here, this is what we're limited to: bold, italics, underline, that's it. But if you create that color or various things
Highlighting.
elsewhere, you can
Yeah.
copy that and paste it and it stays. You
Yeah,
can't
just like the
add it
additional.
here. Yeah,
Yeah.
but you can copy and paste it in. So otherwise, hyperlinks are going to be blue. Everything else is going to be black. But it is kind of fun when you copy and paste something in and that color stays, so you can
Yeah.
get,
It's like
you know,
bright
break it up.
purple or
Yeah.
yeah, it's something fun. Actually building off of that, Angela, really great question around where do you house client notes, or like notes that you've taken during client calls. Some people will add some details to the client details section. So it depends on the client call. I love using notes. So we went to info, and then this is the third tab over for notes.
So right here at the top.
Yeah, exactly. So second tab is details. Third tab is notes. And this is where they've at least like, this is the pretty traditional housing for different calls or anything. So if you hit add, Jody, let's show a quick preview. So it'll automatically timestamp the date. Then you can add a title for what this call was or what this note is about. And then just like here in the client details, we have all that formatting here. So you can leave any objectives, next steps, anything like that. This is not an area of Keeper that you can comment back and forth on. So just keep that in mind if you have to let somebody else know down the line about the action steps from the call that you took. That's something you'll need to like coordinate where to organize that. But exactly, thank you for showing the audit log. So if you change it or anything like that, it'll show a little timestamp of any changes. And then this is another area like client details that you want to make sure and save. I have deleted way too many notes because I clicked off the page and forgot to hit save. So be careful there, but that's pretty typical for the best place that I've come across when I'm trying to keep track of sales notes or project check-ins or anything like that. Really great note space. I absolutely love it, but it's one that is not super known about, honestly. Yep, Kate, it's a static document, but you can go in and update it and change it. A little bit more creative, but I have also seen people use that for what they would use like a Google Doc for if they were doing a big cleanup or a big project or had to note something odd. So if it's not something we want static on the homepage in client details, you can always go in here and use this section a little bit more flexibly and note like cleanup details or brained up on this or something like that. I have used it before for a little bit more creative pieces because again, this just gives me like a faux Google Doc here that lives within the same system. So I'm not having to organize it somewhere else. It's always attached to this client. Great question. All right, friends. Any last questions? Anybody else want to come off or have anything?
I have a question.
Raise
for
a
you.
hand. Go ahead.
Feel free.
So you guys have clearly spent a lot of time thinking through your SOPs and putting them all together. And I know that there's a template community that you can look through, but are your templates something or your SOPs something that we're able to look at? I guess what I'm trying to think of or trying to say is there a way to not recreate the wheel every single time a group, company, whatever needs to create these, because yours are so well thought out.
Oh, well, we
Thank
really
you.
appreciate that. And one of the things that's been really cool, side tangent, is getting to really format these here within Keeper. Every system's a little bit different, so it's really cool to have some Keeper specific that integrate the different parts of Keeper, so you're not duplicating anything. Jody, go ahead and take this one. I'll pass off if I have anything I want to add.
Yeah. So as it stands right now, you're right. We've got the community here. We have one in here that's available for anyone, the weekly bookkeeping tasks. And it has examples of it has the full SOPs that we've created for these particular tasks. Outside of that, you're right. We have a large number of templates. Every time we work with people, if we have something new, we create and we adjust. And so there are a lot of samples here. Yeah. So we do, like Erica mentioned earlier, we have guided support, we have hands-on support, and part of that support in those packages are our templates.
Okay.
So we're happy to talk one-on-one with folks about what their needs are. If you're looking for one template in particular, we can also
we're
talk
super
about that, do
flexible
some
on
a la
that
carte,
front.
but
So I would suggest, just reaching out to us. info@hughesandstrong.com is the best place to go for that. Just shoot me a little email. We'll schedule some time to really flesh out like what processes you really need and looked really great, like all of that kind of stuff. And we'll help you kind of fit with what's going to be the best. But especially since right now there is no way to import if you have SOPs somewhere else, like if you bought them from the workflows with Asana or something like that, you can't import them. Thankfully, we have a partnership with Keeper that they can drop our templates in. So I'm more than happy to kind of explore that with you, talk about pricing and what you actually need. So just email me and we'll set up a time.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. And to build
absolutely.
off of that, if anyone out there has like a custom workflow that they want help with dropping into Keeper, I'm always happy to do those kinds of projects as well, to help you break it down and get it segmented out similar to what we've created in here, so that it's easy to read, easy to follow, and you don't have to, I'm happy to use my brain space so you don't have to create those.
In case there's anything that we don't have a template for, or kind of like bridging off of some of those really custom processes, always happy to help and kind of Keeperify things.
Exactly. While we're in here, Amber asked about the resources template. So that is something that's recent. Right here, we now have this resources tab. So this is going to be that resource page on your client portal. Instead of having to save this somewhere else or copy and paste from another client, you can now create that as a template here and drop that in as you add your clients in. So we've got two examples, kind of a basic, something specific for North Carolina, that kind of thing. So these are also available.
This is an update that went kind of behind the scenes. I was poking around in our templates and I was like, wait, resources? Because our workaround was we created an unconnected client that was just called client templates, that we saved the client details formatting and the resources tab and all of these kind of pieces for what you don't have an area for. So this is really cool. This is really new. I do have a resource on our Keeper page. So hughesandstrong.com/keeper. There is one for if you're curious about what other people put in their resources, like what are even the options and you want some inspiration. I do have a PDF with, I scrolled through the Keeper Facebook group and was like, all right, what is everybody putting in here, and did the whole master search. Most commonly, this is an area that you can really make flexible. So what do your clients typically ask you about? What are like common links that they're going to have to get to? If they have like a Keeper receipts email that they need to keep track of, this is a great place to put it. Those sorts of odds and ends, just to make your client portal that all in one place where you can ask them questions, they can ask you questions, and you have kind of a notes page for anything that they're going to need to refer back to, so you don't get 10 emails about the same thing, hopefully.
All right, we are 20 minutes over now.
Okay, so we'll go
We
ahead
could
and wrap
talk
it
all
up.
day. We could talk all day.
Yeah,
about
you can tell
Keeper.
this is what we love.
Um,
So, with that, we'll go ahead and give everybody their day back. Let you get on with your Wednesday. As I mentioned, if there's anything that you guys have questions about, feel free to email us. We're always happy to hop on a call or do a diagnostic review if you want some eyes on your Keeper account and just want somebody else's perspective to see if you're doing things right. Or we're always happy to talk more about templates if you want to save yourself a little bit of time getting formatted and getting everything in for common processes. So with that, hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. We'll send out the recording on Friday, and then we will hopefully see you next month.
Bye, everyone.